What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into the Tuesday Track Talk podcast, episode number 22, featuring your Three Stones pit crew. My name is Kellen. I'm your Jackman.
I'm your gas man, Cameron.
I'm Cam, your tire changer.
And hot off the press, we got the Daytona 500 wrapping up on a Monday night, which is just absolutely throwing my week off. So we're getting wrapped up with Daytona, kind of a wild finish there. So we'll kind of dig into that. We'll check on ASA Star's national tour for asphalt super late models. And then High Limit finished up at Eastbay. So we'll kind of recap those and give you a couple short, quick race previews as we get ready for another wild week of racing. But where are we at here, fellas, for the week? I know it's a Monday night. We just raced, but where are we at? What's up? What's new?
Well, I mean, I'm glad racing season's all up and running again. I may or may not have slacked off a little bit at work right when 3 o'clock came around.
Productivity way down.
Oh, absolutely.
No, a lot of good racing. Feels good to be back, and yeah, I ain't lifting until I see God or the checkered flags. Let's roll.
Another all-time quote comes out of Daytona. So
My God.
we're gonna go we'll go ahead and look at ASA Stars National Tour. So they had race one of their schedule for the year down at New Smyrna, part of the speed weeks. So what were initial reactions, initial feel? How were we when we were watching that race? What were we processing and feeling and seeing?
I think a lot of it was you saw a lot of favorites kind of running up front right out of the gate. Majeski kind of took off right away. Pollard was kind of making his way up. I think Butcher was up there for a little bit. So, I mean, you saw a lot of the guys that were up front were kind of staying up front.
Except
And
Connor Jones.
yeah, except Connor Jones. He kind of fell back. Um, yeah, it seemed like a lot of the guys that you kind of expected to be there were there for that.
I think one of the things you kind of alluded to it already. Always love giving our Wisconsin drivers some love, but Majeski didn't probably have the qualifying run that he hoped or expected to have. I think he started deeper than he's probably started in the last 2 or 3 years. Started 17th and did all he could to get that hard charger award because it took very few laps and showed his dominance again on the late model scene and had that thing right up front early on. And towards the end of the race, you can't ask for much more at the end of that race. They're two of the best on that scene with Bubba Pollard and him racing for a win at the end. So that was awesome to see. But as a lot of these races go, you don't leave these tracks without some smashed up race cars. And don't think Billy Van Meter made any friends this past weekend.
Oh my. You want to talk about a hot driver, Derek Thorne. Or not Derek Thorne, Derek Griffith.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess you didn't on the broadcast didn't look that bad. What happened, but
they didn't have a camera angle.
Yeah, and once you see Derek Griffith's onboard camera,
yeah,
the whole wheel slipping from the hands is not a good explanation for what he pulled off there.
Well, and the hard part was not only that it ended his race, it ended Griffith's week too. So it was just they loaded up and they were just done because that thing was unfortunately jumped.
Yeah.
And he just caught him and he got loose going into one there, and it's at that point you're just along for the ride. So I mean, kind of with that to that point, Cam, it was kind of a little bit of a race of attrition too. That there was just here and there, you just had guys kind of just getting tangled up a little bit. So, just keeping yourself out of the wrecks, and you were going to be all right. So,
yeah,
kind of another storyline for that too.
Yeah, kind of going through the results here and some of the guys that ended up falling out of that race. We talked about Van Meter and Griffith. Brad May, who was going to be kind of a favorite, he left due to mechanical issues. Jeff Choquette left. Steven Assey had his wreck, and he hit pretty hard too.
Mm-hmm.
Ty Fredrickson, he left because of mechanical issues. So, it was there was definitely a little bit of attrition. Um, but again, it's kind of they had a lot of long, drawn out runs too, where a lot of them guys were just getting lapped to boot too.
And it just felt like, and we talked about Majeski making ground, but it just felt like with that race, track position was king.
Oh yeah,
You had to be out front. You had to be there because there really was. I mean, outside of somebody like Nassie and Majeski who were making ground, there really were no big movers and shakers, really, so to speak, outside of Majeski. So it just felt like um, track position was king early and just starting up front. So
So looking at the top 10 as far as results go, you had two drivers that were outside of the top 15 that finished in the top 10 of that race. Austin Nason started 20th. He finished 7th. And Kyle Stickley, if I'm pronouncing it right, he started 31st and finished 8th.
oh,
So there's your hard charger.
yeah,
Bubba Pollard was started 11th as well.
yeah. There's some guys making some ground. Yeah,
So
I mean, let's be honest. At the end of that race, Pollard was he was reeling Majeski in.
oh yeah, he was going to beat Majeski even if he didn't have his problems.
He was a tenth and a half, 2/10 a lap. He just when it was time to turn the wick up, he was there.
Yep.
That class of the field, and we talked about this last week again. Bubba Pollard, look out!
Get hot again.
The dude's dialed in, and he's
And
he's in to prove a point that
when he's dialed in, he is tough to beat.
yeah.
Very tough to beat. What was your guys' thought on the run or the line that they were running going into turn one? Did it seem like there were a lot of guys creeping up the track and door dinging a little bit?
It felt high.
The inside groove, yeah.
Yeah, even what you would consider the inside groove, it felt high.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a little bit credit to the four barrel compared to the two. You just couldn't quite wrap the bottom that you had to just
Yeah.
let it drift a little bit. But I do have to say, when they got side by side, there was a couple moments you're like, you almost wrecked two race cars there.
It felt they were diamonding the corner.
Yeah, absolutely they were. Yeah, it just felt like there was a couple moments where like,
there were a couple of them like, oh, he's gonna get knocked out of the way when he gets into 3, and it just
yeah. But the interesting part was then you go to the other end, and I think that's kind of the cool part about New Smyrna is it just shaped a little different where they could wrap the bottom.
yep.
In 3 and 4, where that 1 and 2 was just had that big diamond in the middle, let it kind of drift up, and you're coming down off, and you can make that back stretch as long as possible.
I forgot who said it. I think it was Majeski actually that said you had a really good car if you could wrap 1 and 2 like you would Five Flags. If you could just wrap that bottom like you would at Five Flags, you had the dominant car there, and that's exactly what Bubba was able to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, kind of last point on that is, a lot of these times, some of these tracks, are bottom feeders or bottom dominant, but that higher up line in 1 and 2, if you had the car to do it, there was times where guys were making that work, or you could at least hold your own, which made it awesome racing. I mean, it wasn't one of those things where it was like, hey, if you're stuck on the outside on a restart, you're gonna lose, 3-4 spots until you can get in line. No, some of those guys were making it work and holding their own, if not gaining a few spots. So, yeah, I thought it was definitely interesting racing. Good racing for that fact, but no, it was definitely a little bit of a weird entry.
But I do have to say, I think, Cam, to your point, I think that had to do with that new tire compound that Hoosier brought for the race. I think it gave them a little bit more flexibility to go ahead and hang on just a little bit longer on the outside as well. So again, another element to that too of having that new tire on bolted on the cars. So,
Kyle,
yeah,
give a shout out to your guy before we wrap it up, old Casey Roderick.
I was
Oh,
just about
Roderick,
to bring
yeah,
him up. Yep.
yeah.
He was he was strong all night long.
Yeah, well, for sure.
Another guy that I kind of want to shout out to, Brent Cruz. Talk about a welcoming first race, kind of like a Fredrickson at Lacrosse.
Yeah,
You couldn't have done it much better against a very stacked field in the way that he did.
yeah. And on top of that, winning the super late model
Yep,
Speedway
one.
championship.
Yep,
So showing that has arrived, obviously, with Donnie Wilson underneath him, that team put together a rocket of a race car.
yeah.
But obviously keeping himself out of trouble all week. So yeah, pretty cool little deal there as well.
Just looking at this too, Bubba led 17 laps. Led the
Probably
last 17 laps. That's all he led.
I was gonna say it was probably to be the last 17. Yeah.
Yep, last 17. Majeski, hands down, led the most laps. Um, but Bubba was leading when it mattered.
Yep. It's only the last one that pays.
You got that right. You got that right. So,
So
Bubba Pollard, Jet Nolan, Casey Roddick, Brent Cruz, and Gio Rozier, your top five. Chase Elliott, who was very quiet but just kept himself out of trouble. Austin Nason, them two guys were fighting hard
yeah,
that entire race for a good chunk of it. Kyle Steckley, Cole Butcher, and Jake Finch were your top 10 in that one.
yeah.
And
Good,
for
good.
you guys, old DK Derek Krause was 12th. Started 12th, finished 12th.
Rolled off without power steering to even start the race. So it
So
makes
yeah,
for makes for long 200 laps.
you got that right. So no,
Yeah,
good race. Really enjoyed it.
yeah,
Next one comes down March 24th at Five Flag Speedway. So you can probably see a lot of guys there again. Maybe just all right. It's a practice run for the snowball between
yep.
the competition that's there and just running the track itself.
Data
Yep.
tested too, and especially with the new tire. So yeah, well that kind of wraps up Stars National Tour at New Smyrna for their season opener. Let's go ahead and jump over to the dirt. We got High Limit Sprint Cars kicking off their season. So they went to Eastbay. Obviously we talked a little bit about it last week with Eastbay closing up at the end of the year. Um, Mother Nature, not so kind on night one. They got through hot laps and qualifying, I believe. Rained out, turned around. They ran 2 features in one day. So hats off to the High Limit crew and how they ran that whole year. I mean, they talk about day one, a little bit of calamity. They did a really good job running that show. So um initial reactions to High Limit at East Bay.
No, I would say, yeah, first and foremost, the most important part was getting the shows in and to get smacked with some adversity right off the bat on Monday night. I think they got, one or two heat races in, and then it was just raining sheets last week when we were recording, and I think it pretty much wiped out all the racing in Florida last week. But no, again, we talked in depth on this when Lucas Oil was at East Bay. It's just a crying shame that track is closing, because you didn't think that racing you could top, the shows that Lucas Oil put on, but those sprint cars were as good, if not better. You guys ripping the wall. You had Tyler Courtney running the very bottom, guys just all over the place. And no, I was quite, I don't want to say impressed, but happy with the first night. It's some of the things like they're trying to do High Limit, like some unique things that I kind of like, at one night at a race, a driver gets his playlist. So trying to do some of those like unique things where like the first night, I forget who it was, if it was Justin Peck or I don't know whose playlist it was, but whatever. Some of those unique things that were, lets you get to know the driver a little bit more. I enjoyed. I like kind of the change up, playing music, between heats and whatever. So overall, for the first two races of High Limit, I liked it. Trying some new things. I'm sure, between Sweet and Larson, they're going to roll with the punches, take all the feedback, and just keep trying to make it better. But overall, I enjoyed it.
I think to your point, Cam, with like the playlists and the fan interaction in between qualifying and the heats, they're trying to get out of the routine that was sprint car racing, the schedule of the day.
Yeah.
You could literally, as long as you knew the start time, you could make the entire schedule and have a damn good idea on when everything was going to end. Where this one, it just kind of disrupts that a little bit.
Yep.
And adds that personality into there.
Yeah.
It highlights the drivers.
Yeah, a little bit more. I wouldn't. I don't know if I'd say non-traditional, but it is like it's something different. And of course, Flow, they love the QR codes. You can open it up and you can scan the Spotify playlist like Cam was
Yep.
talking. So that's
Did
pretty cool. But
did either of you guys take advantage of that, or
I did. I was too wrapped up, honestly. The Whiskey Myers Victory Lane thing,
Yeah,
10 out of 10. That was awesome. I was digging that. That was pretty solid. I was enjoying that. So that was like I didn't, but the Whiskey Myers deal, that's pretty cool.
sure? I was
So
kind of too in tuned with other races that I didn't really get to fully pay attention to high limit. Um, but again, you had a strong car count there too that it added to the competition that was there for that race. I mean,
yeah,
Larson had, you want to talk about a tale of two races, goes from winning feature one on that night to flipping on night two, or on feature two, really.
yeah, yeah, night two, same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so kind of just looking at the race winners, you got Larson winning the first feature, the makeup rain feature. And then you got Sunshine, Tyler Courtney taking feature two. So that's good to see it. He's running well as well. Getting ready and gearing up for the season. So again,
Again, that
another
a guy that could be a threat.
yep, it can be a threat to anywhere.
I think too, off that, there was some, I don't want to say unexpected, but I think definitely some guys that, set the tone for the year. Um, Anthony Macri,
Yep.
solid qualifying. And I think he finished in the top five. If I pull this up quick, one of the nights, night one, he finished in the top five. So some of those guys, Cole Macedo, had a solid run, and then Tanner Thorson as well. So um, some guys you see up front that I don't want to say you don't typically see up front, but um,
Showing up.
yeah, definitely some of those guys hopefully setting the tone for the year, getting off on the right foot, and you know,
It's
tighten
for me,
tighten
it
that
was
points race up throughout the year.
yeah, for me it was always like, all right, you got new faces, new names, new paint schemes, different teams. It was like, all right, well, that car was this individual, now it's not. So you're looking at the cars expecting somebody in here in a different name. So some slick looking race cars. I mean, for sprint cars, they had some wild paint schemes that were pretty sweet. So just getting reacclimated to new names, new faces.
So one thing that we'll probably have to keep an eye out for, and we'll give it a little shout out here to Master Casters on the old Tweeter app. I didn't see this before the race, but I might have to keep an eye on this. He had a little preview thing, just a simple screenshot of it. He had High Rollers versus the Invaders, he called them. Recent Eastbay race winners, and then he just had some notes in there. And one of the notes was that Justin Peck was second behind Tyler Courtney during both All-Star Circuit of Champs races in 2023. So Tyler Courtney was already very good at Eastbay, and he showed why.
Yep. Yeah. Well, he snagged a feature win.
Yep. So
More
that's
things
his.
change, the more they stay the same. Brad Sweet finishes fourth the first night and third the second night. So the more they change, the more they stay the same. He'll be up front every single week, every single race, and there's a good chance he's going to have something to say about who wins the inaugural championship.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember Larson's only running the Tuesday night deal, so with his schedule now, gave him a little flexibility to get those two features in prior to just running on the midweek
Mhm.
championship side. So, would think he'd be fairly heavy favorite to win that as well. So, yeah, that kind of wraps up what was two 2 days, one day of uh some good sprint car racing at high limit for Eastbay. All right, so we're gonna jump into hot off the press, the weekend at Daytona, a little bit of everything. Let's go ahead and jump into the trucks and ARCA. Where do we want to start with that one?
I'm where do you want to start with that one? I mean,
Yikes.
Let's
first off,
start in the shop.
first thing, one thing that I want to talk about, both of them, the trucks and the cars, were severely unstable in the draft.
Eesh.
Severely.
I just felt like they were moving more than they ever have.
Yep. And they
Yeah.
mentioned like I told you guys, like I was racing into the radio broadcast at first for the truck race, and I like they had Cole Custer as the guest announcer on that one, and he said the trucks are definitely of the top three, the Cup, Xfinity, and trucks. They are definitely the hardest to handle in the draft, hands down.
It showed. It definitely showed.
Showed.
It also showed in the number of trucks we wrapped as well. Yeah, I
Expensive
mean,
weekend.
so kind of going on that, I guess to build onto that point, is that a lack of experience or is it guys just making moves and they're not clear? Or is it accountability? Is it inexperience? What are we feeling in the mix of all of that, I guess?
Well, look at how many bad pushes there were.
That too. Yeah.
But I think that goes with the lack of experience. It's you have to know when to bump guys you can't bump in the corners, you can't bump in the tri-ovals. And that's where they were getting hit. Or even if you're on straightaway, if you absolutely ram a guy, you just can't hit him on that corner. You have to hit him straight.
Yeah.
So I'll take it two ways. I think what feeds into all this, and say what you want, but if we're talking freshman, JV, and varsity, the truck series is essentially the freshman team in the NASCAR series, which leads to inexperience and a lot of young guys out there. And I think another thing that feeds into it is these guys. The unfortunate part about racing is you got to make a name for yourself or you're jobless.
Yeah.
And some of these younger guys get in these trucks and it's like, hey, I only got 5 races scheduled for this year. I got to do something and make a name for myself, which leads to them trying to win the race on lap 6. And we got 5 smashed up cars or trucks. Yeah. So I think it starts with, these young guys are trying to make a name for themselves, knowing how cutthroat this business is. And if they don't perform and they don't do well, they're going to be jobless. But with that, I think that leads to the inexperience of them doing stuff to try to not see the full picture and try to win the race early, which leads to we had smashed up trucks early. And it's just like,
And
guys, we don't need to be winning the race on lap 6 and pushing and trying to make blocks and stuff. It's like, guys, we're 6 laps into it. Just
it almost
get the field in a groove before you start throwing blocks and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say, Cam, it's almost like a feeling of you don't know what you don't know. And for some of these guys, that's the first time, one, they're in a truck, but two, they're at Daytona. It just felt like the perfect calamity of like guys being aggressive, but you don't know what to expect. And those trucks push such a big hole in the air that you don't know how you're going to take a push. You don't know how hard you can push. And then you got to remember, those guys can't lock bumpers like the Cup Series can and just push and push and push. So I think that to that point too, you get those big runs and those big shots, and it just turns into trucks not being able to handle it or guys not knowing where to take that energy.
And with that, they alluded to it in the cup race. You can practice and you can sim race all you want, and you can go to practice and run in a group and practice. But they said on the cup race, you don't know what you got or how it's going to feel until you get 35 trucks on the track. You're too wide and everybody's bumper to bumper.
Yep.
You just can't simulate that. So, I mean, for a lot of those young guys, you're learning on the fly. What does my truck got? This, that, and the other thing. And I know nowadays, sims and stuff like that is pretty damn realistic, but still, it's some of that. You're feeling stuff that you've never felt before for the first time in your life when you're out there going 180 miles an hour and you're in the middle, 3 wide. And then you throw in a savvy vet like Johnny Sauter out there, who shout out, led the most laps, won a stage, who, when he's running that outside lane, he wasn't cutting those guys an inch, pinching them to the bottom, doing all the savvy vet tricks he could. I think it was Brett Holmes that he wrecked, didn't touch him, but he got so close to him that Holmes lost it coming out of the corner. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the series goes from here. Obviously, you saw on social media, there's not a lot of great reviews about it, the amount of equipment that gets smashed up. So I guess I don't know what one specific thing leads to that. Hopefully let's just hope that it was just Daytona, but I don't know.
And it's back-to-back races for them guys. Phoenix wasn't very great.
My God.
And then you go to here, wasn't very great.
And then we go to Atlanta.
So, like, I was talking to my grandfather about this. Like, one of the points that we made was this kind of goes to maybe like that accountability side of things, where you don't get the cup presence like you used to in the truck series or the Xfinity series, where if somebody screwed up, that cup guy was coming to grab you by the collar and tell you what you did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's like, hey, come to the bus, and 2 hours later you come walking out with your tail between your legs
Yep.
because you know you're screwed up.
You get your cage rattled a little bit.
Exactly. You got the fear of God put in you, basically.
Listen here and listen good.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was one thing that I kind of thought of. And two, again, it kind of is like monkey see, monkey do. You look at the guys that race on Sunday, and you're looking at the moves that they pulled off. They wrecked on lap 6 today.
Yep.
So it's who knows?
Yeah, it was interesting because then you see, I saw a lot on Twitter that when they had their drivers meeting, the truck series, at least, they got a talking to about smashing stuff up.
And then they go and smash stuff up.
And we proceeded lap number 4. I think it was lap number 4, number 6, that we got a couple junked trucks already. It's like,
Yeah.
Did you listen?
Yeah.
So I mean that was tough.
I guess one thought I have is, how do you correct this, or how do you get accountability? Because now with cup guys they're restricted on how many races they can do. So you're not going to have cup guys in trucks that often. But it's like, if Sanchez is wrecking Christian Eckes, I mean, that's two 21-year-old, like, who's gonna pull him aside and say,
Hello.
what are you doing? Yeah.
So I've got two responses to that. There's the harsh way and the tough way. The harsh way is that you get your ass beat by somebody.
Yep.
The tough way, I figured you'd like that comment. The tough way is that if you wreck a truck, you're working on that truck in the shop that week.
Yeah.
You're coming in bright and early to work on that, fix that truck.
Yeah, there's no simulator work this week. You're turning wrenches.
Exactly. And that makes a guy think about the things that he does really quickly.
Well, and I think this like the sad part of not sad part, but I remember that Kellen, you were in lacrosse that weekend last fall for the truck race, and I was like, it's 11:30 at night, and we're on restart in overtime. We're on like restart 6. I'm like, dude, I am going to bed. Like, this is not like it just
Yeah.
got to a point where it's like not good. It's like we're gonna drop the flag. Somebody's gonna cut way below the apron. Somebody's gonna try to block. We got a wrecked truck. Let's do it again. And it sucks. And it's like it's not good for the sport. And then you follow that up with Daytona, who Christian Eckes finished 10th. And I can't quite wrap my brain around the top 10, but I know for a fact he finished 10th and his truck was wrecked. I don't even know that he crossed the finish line. It's like that just goes to speak what this series is doing, what these guys are doing. When somebody who's got a wrecked truck had damage all night and he finished 10th. So we started the night with 36 trucks and we got less than 10 that are crossing the line.
For
Clean
the
up.
record,
Yep.
51 of the 101 laps that were run were under caution.
You're literally 50% of your race was under caution.
Throwing that out there. Trying to get.
So you threw that out there and you left a little cliffhanger. You gonna throw any input in on that? You just hit us with a
it's bad.
crazy. You just hit
It's
us with a
bad.
crazy stat and had no opinion on it.
I saw it in this article that I'm reading from NASCAR.com, and it's just that just shouldn't happen.
No, it's
That's-
what's next, but how do you address it? Does NASCAR just start parking guys? Hey,
I know
that
it's
one's on you.
Daytona.
Park it. Have a
I
good
know it's
night.
Daytona, but do you race trucks at Daytona? That comment was thrown out on Twitter.
I
Does the
mean,
first race need to be at Daytona?
that's a conversation in itself. Maybe that's mid-season type of deal.
But that conversation's out there too. So I don't know. It could be. I could say it's definitely an experience, but I think it's guys gotta learn somehow.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hard part of it is there's got to be an experience curve to this, and I guess it comes at what dollar amount.
Yeah. For the record, guys, Xfinity is starting to boot up on FS1.
Sounds good. We'll have to
If you
keep an
guys
eye on
want
it.
to tune in.
I mean, and I know, like you said, sometimes it's like Raja. I mean, he was the one.
Yeah, he had a little saying who won that race as well.
I mean, he was the cause of the big one, which took out 80% of the trucks. But yeah, I don't know where
That's what I mean. How do you
myself learned. I like in my life, like I learn by doing stuff. Like that's how I learn. I have to
Yeah.
do it myself to learn. But it's like, and you got to give these guys some grace because, like we said, it's experience. These are 18, 19-year-olds, whatever. But it's like Kyle Busch's shirt, most expensive night of my life.
Huh.
I mean, when you show up to Daytona, I mean, like you're literally showing up, and for a lot of these teams, it's like puts the
volunteer
team in a hole to start the year
and stuff.
financially. Yeah.
Oh.
So I don't know what's next. I'm gonna keep tuning in and see if this gets better. Good news is we go to Atlanta next, which races like a super speedway, so should be some action-packed racing, but
It's just one of those scenarios. It's just like you just can't look away.
because the big one happens every other lap.
Yeah.
You want to talk about a tough, like another part to that is like, I know you want to put on good racing, but hey, you want to lose fans and lose interest? Reason number one is run 50% of your race under caution.
Let's start.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we go from here, how we fix it, but
And I mean, honestly, like, so this entire conversation we've had about the truck series, I mean, it's parallel in the Arkham Menard series, right?
Oh yeah, they yeah.
You can wash, rinse, repeat. It's the exact same scenario. I mean, I think they wrecked on lap 3 instead of lap 6.
Yep.
It's the exact same scenario. It's how do we where do you go from here? I mean, how do you address it? How do you answer those questions? And if teams are okay to keep sticking money in in it that way, I guess. All right, well, they signed up for it, but
Yeah.
so I mean, so actually, we can go back to um Nick Sanchez ultimately ended up winning the truck race there. We kind of
He
touched on it.
was
Johnny led a ton of laps and he looked really good in that Nice truck. But yeah, ultimately Sanchez ended up coming away with that.
he was due for a win.
Yeah,
Especially
yeah,
later part of the year, he was due for a win. Not the
he's
place you
running.
expected him to win, but he was due for a win.
Yeah, and he was running well. So yeah, that's I guess next
I
up
should
Atlanta.
say I should say it's good to see Sanchez bounce back from that sucker punch, but um
Yikes.
we were just talking. How do you want to discipline him? Crafton,
You get your ass kicked. That'll
Crafton will go to work for us.
yeah.
But no,
If you're gonna be dumb, you better be tough.
I do want to say too, like as much as it seems or sounds like I was just ripped the shit out of the truck series. There is a lot of good guys in that series that are fun to watch. Rhodes,
It,
Crafton,
it puts
Majeski.
on good racing too.
Yeah,
When it's on, it's on.
yeah.
Yeah, when those guys, it's not the entire field that is a crapshoot top to bottom. Stewie, I mean,
And Finger.
Enfinger. There are some savvy vets in there that they're fun to watch when it gets on, and
Yep.
so
To a mile and a half. You get them to a Bristol. You get
yeah,
them to a Martinsville. You get them to some of those tracks that just produce good racing. They do. They honestly do. It's a
Yep.
good point. It's just hard in an event like this when those guys don't get a chance because you got two young guns that ultimately take the field out.
Yeah.
and I think that the unfortunate part is a lot of times these young gun mistakes overshadow the good
Yeah.
racing, or unfortunately wreck some of these vets trucks, and then all of a sudden it's like, yep, here we go again. But
Yep.
no,
Yeah.
it is a good series. I do enjoy it, and it
Ben
does
Rhodes.
some good racing.
Yeah, they were talking Ben Rhodes last year. He had one DNF. Well, he's 0
Got
for
his
1.
one.
Yeah, he's 0 for 1 already on the year.
Last thought before we jump topics, we always talk about like, rising stars, who's going to make the next jump. Is Rhodes just going to be a trucker for life?
Yep.
I wouldn't mind it.
Like he's,
Let him and Crafton go at it. I'm here for it.
Oh, absolutely.
And then
I mean,
stick Sauter in the mix.
he's
There you
every
go.
year. Like if you want to move up in the series and you want somebody who takes care of his equipment, runs up front, finishes the races, one DNF a year,
Comes from behind a ton.
Yeah.
like that's somebody who you would think should be in line for, hey, let's look at getting him an Xfinity ride. But does he not have the funding? Is he just content being a trucker? I don't
He's
know what
probably
your
happy
guys'
to win
thought.
races.
Absolutely.
He's winning races with Thorsport, and you got good drivers around you in that camp as well. I mean, him and Majeski, you can duke it out with your teammate every week at this point.
If you work good with your sponsors too,
Yeah.
if you know, yep, I'll stick with you for, if you stay in the trucks, we'll stick with you. Okay, I have a guaranteed ride.
Yep.
The other thing too is I don't know what he has for family, but a 26 race schedule's
A lot easier.
a little
That is
bit more
true.
family time for him.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just interesting thought, but yeah.
Yeah. Um, kind of, I guess we might as well go ahead and jump into the grand finale of the weekend, huh?
Well, the main event of the weekend, not necessarily the finale.
Well, yeah, Xfinity's rolling, but it was the big one, the Great American Race, the Daytona 500. It we got done here at 7 o'clock, so an hour ago. Initial knee-jerk reactions. It almost feels like a live reaction at this point.
I mean, the ending left me wanting more. Like, don't get me wrong. I get the rule. The ruling of the finish was absolutely correct. It was handled perfectly, but it just felt like I got left like something was missing almost.
Yeah, I'd agree. It felt you just kind of sat there and you're like, oh, let's rack them up and try it one more time.
The
Xfinity's rolling green if you guys are got it pulled up.
Yeah, we're already on lap 5, bud.
Yeah, I just fired up.
Um,
Allmendinger going for what is it, 800 miles today?
yeah, there's 5 guys doing 800 miles. Well, that's a good point to bring up here too. Anthony Alfredo, John Hunter Nemechek, AJ Allmendinger, Daniel Suarez, and God dang it, who was the last one? I'm going through the lineup here, see if I can find him.
Kaz
Riley
Gralla.
Herbst. Riley Herbst. They're all doing the double today.
Yeah.
800 miles. I think the race itself was good. I think there was a lot of good pack racing. I think there was a little bit of different style of racing this year than we have seen in years past, mainly because we didn't see the single file ride it out at the beginning of stage 3. Them guys were going at it the entire race.
Yeah. And even like we were talking before, even like the end of stage 2, they didn't wreck any race cars, but the boys were racing.
They wanted to wreck.
They were trying their damnedest at that point. But just the moves and the runs and the lane changes and the blocks, they didn't wreck any race cars at that point. But wow, I was waiting for it to happen at the end of stage 2 as well.
You know, I talk about the single file lane, and we're on lap 7 of the Xfinity race, which they've already gone farther than the trucks and the Cup race before their first caution. Yikes. There is single file line here.
Yeah, single file. They're all just running right around the top.
And RCR looks like a genius. As these guys are running on to, but no, I would say my initial knee-jerk reaction to Cup race is, pardon my French, but fucking awesome. Just good to be back. And I think this again makes another great case for the restrictor plate racing and the racing it puts on. And I think it's just awesome the strategies that were played out. And
that especially.
Yeah. And when you get, hey, you're going 200 miles an hour and all of a sudden here comes 6. You got to slow it down to whatever it is, 55 miles an hour. And just the strategies, the groups of cars pitting together. And then towards the end there, I mean, we were going what? Probably 10 laps, 3 wide.
Yeah.
And it was just, better hope those belts are strapped tight because, guys, it was with less than 50 to go, as Kevin Harvick said, it's go time. There's no give, it's all take. And that was clear for 10 laps, you know, when they're running 3 wide, everybody's pushing.
And to that point,
awesome.
And to that point, I think when you look at how the race played out, you had the wreck real early. You took out a couple cars early. And then from there, we pretty much ran green flag and we were able to let the strategies play out in terms of the stages. And when you wanted to stop for fuel, it's like the Chevys had the green flag stops nailed down.
Yeah.
The Chevys had that figured out, and the Fords gave them a hell of a run on that.
The Chevys had it in the first half. The Fords figured it out in the second.
The Fords figured out what not to do when Chevy burned them the first time.
Yeah.
But it just that little incident, a little dust up early, and then it just from there it was all strategy until what 10 to go and we wrecked most of the field. It just that middle was intriguing because there were just different strategies with manufacturers, and then like at one point you had like 5 car stop. It was 3 Chevys, a Toyota, and a Ford.
Yep.
And you're with who you're with, and you're like, okay, game on, here we go.
Listening to the radio call on the way back from work, I was kind of listening to it before they did one of their green flag rounds. It was also the trying to get grouped together with guys, get down to that bottom line so that way you could pit with who you wanted to which added to the strategy of it and how the race turned out and everything to go with that too.
Well, and they were kind of talking about that, especially with Blaney. Blaney was trying that first. Is his first or second round? Blaney was trying to get down, and I think it was Hamlin that was inside of him. They get a little run, and I thought he was going to clear it. Denny, no, no thanks.
Yep.
And again, that played into that strategy of the rest of the Fords might be behind you, and you're going to be in trouble because you're just stuck in the second lane.
And not only that, you talk about the strategy and coming to pit road. One, this race brings out, hey, it's our time to shine. Pit crew, gotta be spot on.
Yep.
Pit road, can't speed, can't recover from that shit. So it brings out the team the pit crew aspect of it under green flag. And then the game within the game that was the race winning move for the Chevys was that last green flag stop. They staggered themselves down the back stretch and they broke up the Ford line.
Yeah, that was Larson and Bowman, I think it was. Larson started it, and he shuffled himself right in between Logano and whoever was pushing
Race
Logano.
winning move. Split up. It was Logano, Reagan, Brad K, and who was the other Ford that was those four that were just latched and they were just
I think Blaney was in there.
Blaney, those guys were in there.
Yep.
But the game within the game, down the backstretch, they come off pit road, not quite up to speed, but they staggered themselves enough that they got those Fords out of line and ended up being a race winning move for the Chevy camp. But
Speak of the devil, and man, really mentioned it. David Reagan,
Oh
he's
yeah.
competitive. Seriously competitive in that
Yep.
RFK car.
That was a a hell of a pick by Keselowski.
Yeah.
To get him in that car. Hell of a pick.
At one point I looked down and I'm like, he's running second. He's like, all of a sudden, where'd he come from?
Yep. He was running
He's
better
running
than
second.
his teammates.
Yeah.
And it was
first time in that next gen car too.
Yeah. Yep.
And they mentioned on the broadcast too, a lot of those guys, David Reagan, they said, first off, kudos to him. What a fucking run. Pardon my French.
You're really dropping the French here.
Sorry.
Getting into it tonight.
Yeah.
We lost our PG-13 rating.
A little bit juiced up after that race. No, they said like he's really involved in, I don't know where he is, but setups of cars, tire pressures, all that stuff. So it's like,
Yep.
it wasn't hey, I know you haven't hopped behind the wheel in 10 years. See if you can do it, but
shows up, gets in the car, runs the race, and leaves type of thing.
Yeah. Somebody who had to race his way in too.
Yeah. Well, no, he didn't have to because he qualified in.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He showed up without a guaranteed starting spot.
Yep. I want to go back to like the tight racing there for a little bit. We saw it in the duels, definitely saw it in the 500. The riding it out portion of that race was them side by side running those top two grooves in that race. And that you want to talk about a one little mistake and you're really piling them up.
That, and then you have McDowell picking and choosing his lane by God. And then at one point, like Bell had pulled out to make it 3 wide, and we're going into 1, and McDowell's a sitting duck on the bottom. He can't get off the track on the apron, and it's like everyone.
Damn shame for McDowell too.
I know.
Damn shame.
Yeah, he was in my lineup. Not a big deal.
He was in mine too. God, he could have talk about a guy that could have disrupted that a lot. But no, it definitely was a lot more intense this year than I think we've seen in years past. Again, because we didn't see that single file line.
And honestly, the third lane, it came in late. But during the race, the top 2 lines were the dominant spot to be. The bottom would kind of get a group together, and then it would kind of fizzle, and then they would make a little run, and then they would fizzle. Or those top 2 grooves were just wide open the whole time.
Yeah.
And I think
I'm just
another point.
Wreck.
Who?
I'm just
You're,
watching these guys trying
yeah,
to
you're
wreck.
watching Xfinity, aren't you?
They're
Um,
trying to wreck.
I think too, some of the others, not only the game within the game, working with your manufacturer, your team, but not only that, but we saw a lot of guys that it was, hey, I'm here for myself and myself only.
I bet you
And
I think everybody was,
I want to hear
honestly.
your thoughts on it, Mr. Blaney.
Well, so yeah.
Because it happened early on, which I don't think he fully understood. You know, when he got left in the dust on the pit strategy, he was on pit road for an extra second to get more fuel, and he got lost with the Fords that he pitted with, and he was pissed because they were just driving away from him. I don't think he fully understood what the reason was, but you heard him come on the radio later or at shortly thereafter, drop a couple F bombs saying he ain't helping any of his teammates the rest of the race. And he made that quite clear at the end of stage 2.
Stuck to his guns.
He gave Cindric the shaft.
Yeah, he
Which,
did.
which I said to you guys in the group chat, Kellen, you're like, wow, bold move. But it's like, I don't know if they got a little chemistry issue, but Cindric did it to Burton in the duels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, do unto others as you do unto yourself, I guess, kind of situation there of
Hamlin did the same thing. Honestly, I bet you, and it just seemed like that throughout the race. The only time there was ever like that cooperation amongst anybody was pitting, because everybody needed somebody to pit with.
yeah, to run. Yeah.
Yep.
They end up not going a lap down ultimately.
Yep. It's like you could deal with the race itself on your own, but when it came to pit road, you needed that partner.
Yeah. And that's what I think, again, it kind of mixed up at least the manufacturers of like
You didn't
I
see the
said,
big Chevy group. You didn't see the big Ford group.
you really, I mean, honestly, you really only saw it with that last pit stop.
Yeah.
That felt like the only time that the manufacturers really had it organized, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, all of a sudden they had it all sorted out. But those first couple pit stops, it was just they were all mixed bags of. I mean, Christ, at one point you got a 3-car stop. It's Justin Haley, Kyle Busch, and Denny Hamlin are your 3 cars that stopped. You're like, what the hell?
Yep.
Another
Yep.
storyline. I could talk about this race for hours. Um, the cars, for being a restrictor plate race, guys could go. Kyle Busch and Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, those guys, typically you get stuck in the back and you ride around for a while. Heck no, those boys were
Nope.
front to back to front. Like they were, Kyle Busch was driving it through the field. Joey Logano had the car, the class of the field for a car. But those boys, I mean, for a restrictor plate race, the moves they made, they could drive it right back to the front.
Yep.
And honestly, I wanted to see those 2 race it out at the end. I think between those 2 and probably Denny, I wanted to see those 3 race it out because I think looking at what they did, they probably had the best 3 cars in the field.
Yeah.
But it's Daytona.
Which that kind of brings up the point. I mentioned at the top of the show, or the episode, I should say, that it felt like that finish left us wanting more. And, maybe I got to look at the replay a little bit more. I think the car that really determined the caution was Cindric. Him coming back up onto the track, and depending how he hit, that's how the caution was determined. But do we think he got thrown too early?
So here's what I'm going to say. I think when I looked at it, what I honestly wanted to happen, and I know the rule is the rule, but I wanted NASCAR to go back and say, we're going to re-rack them and finish it. We'll take the guys out that are wrecked. We'll take them off. We'll make sure that they're okay. Start there, get them off the track. I was just hoping there was going to be one more chance at it to let them race for it, then go back on the video and make a call.
So,
But you got to stick to your guns. The rule is the rule. I get that. I really
Yep.
do.
And like I said, Cindric, I mean, Chastain spun too, but Cindric was the one that caused the lights to come on, basically, with how he wrecked. And it's
Correct.
just a matter of, was it at a point where, and it's, the caution comes out in that scenario when a driver is at risk or when safety needs to roll.
Correct.
So it's just, I would have to, like I said, I have to go back and see how he wrecked, but I don't know. Is it,
Oh.
there's a hard hit.
Ooh, that's
Xfinity.
here. Who just piled into them? There's 3 of them there.
So
91.
Can't see that other one.
15 vodka, that's Haley Deegan.
Yep.
With the hood up?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
That's Deegan.
That's
For those that are
Suarez?
listening
Possible.
along,
That's Suarez in the 14.
we're watching the Xfinity race as we're recording here.
No, they made it 23 laps before they wrecked.
Yeah.
Is that 14? Is that a calling car?
No. I don't remember whose car that is, but it's not a Collie car.
I think it's part of that like track. I don't know. What was I gonna say about Cup Series? What were we just talking about Cup Series?
Well, we were talking about the finish.
They're finishing the wreck.
Oh yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I jog my memory on the overtime rules. I thought when you get the white flag, usually there's the white strip down the back straightaway that on the white flag you have to get to that.
That was years ago. They abolished that.
They did away with that, yeah.
Yep. So
I
it was
thought that was like
purely white.
last year.
It's white flag. Next flag ends the race.
Yeah.
When did
Well,
they get rid of that? I thought that they had this rule like last year.
Because it took Daytona, Talladega, perfect example. It took them 5 tries just to hit the line
Yeah.
for it to be an official race. Because guys would be wrecking on the backstretch before they even hit the line.
Because when they threw the flag and they're like, I think William Byron won it, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, we didn't hit the white line. We got to re-rack him.
Yeah, no, you're a few years behind there, bud.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Wow.
He's bringing, maybe we need to do a podcast episode on NASCAR rules. Ooh, that was a hard hit for
Mayer
Sam
hit
Hamlin.
hard. Yikes.
Ouch. He just got right reared, full head of steam.
Who was
Mayor.
it?
Oh, Mayer. Yikes.
Ouch.
Very similar to Blaney wreck.
Correct. That looked like it hurt bad.
Oofed.
But no, I mean, unfortunately, the rule's the rule is what
Yep.
it comes down to. You know, I mean,
It was the right, regardless of when the caution came out, it was 100% the right call.
yeah.
As far they followed their rule to a T.
And I knew they took the green. I sat there, I'm like, they called it. It's just going to be a matter of when did the lights come on and who was out front.
Yep, and they followed that to a T.
Yep, they said that's what they're going to do. And no, I do like William Byron. I don't mind him winning that race. I mean, I wish we could have raced it out, but for Hendrick and them to go 1-2, especially with Bowman there, for him to win the race, I do like him. But
on Hendrick's either today or tomorrow's 40th anniversary of being a team, you can't. Hendrick said it himself. You can't write better than this.
Today, it was today.
Yep. So you can't write better stories.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, I enjoy William Byron. He's obviously a badass race car driver, and
I don't know if I've mentioned this in previous episodes when we were kind of previewing the season, but I definitely have him in my championship 4. I think I'm at this point that I've got him as my champion for this year.
Oh, you're showing
that is my prediction.
I was gonna say after finally watching the NASCAR speed, the full speed, hard not to be a fan, realizing he's only 25 years old and is dialed in and as motivated, and the kid's only going to get better.
Oh yeah.
And it's like the year he had last year, it's like that was his coming out party. And then you hear him saying that docu-series of I felt like now I am really confident with my team and knowing what he wants in his car and stuff like that. And it's like, shit, he had that year last year and he wasn't confident and didn't really know what he wanted. It's like, shit, we're looking at the next 15 years of domination from that 24 camp.
and now you knock off that Daytona 500.
There's one thing left.
Yep. Well, some crown jewels, but now that next big check mark is that championship.
Title.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So
No, I mean, honestly, just I'm glad we're back. I mean, we're a day late, but
it
we're
was
racing.
a great race. Still kept up the energy for even being on a Monday.
Yeah.
A lot of fans.
That's what some of the reporters were saying too, that there were a lot of fans that stuck around, almost like you didn't even know it was a Monday race.
Yeah.
I want to get into some of these drivers, some of the results.
You just saw that replay again, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mayer hit hard. Cam, are you watching this?
Yeah, that's where you just hope and pray when you hear him on the radio. Hey, say
You
something.
just want to hear I'm all right.
Yeah, I just need a second, but
Hey, I will say one of the things getting into it, the young guns showed up. Looking at John Hunter Nemechek finishing 7th. Granted, he had what you could argue was a little bit his fault early on with the Harrison Burton.
yeah.
But you had John Hunter Nemechek finishing 7th. The Ford camp showing up. Tony Stewart put them on notice. Good run for Gregson, 9th. Chase Briscoe, 10. And then one of my sneaky picks in fantasy, Zane Smith over Josh Berry. Zane Smith brings home the 71 and 13th.
Yep, I had that pick as well. I also had Corey LaJoy in my lineup. He finished 4th. Bubba Wallace, a guy that, he's probably got a lot more confidence coming into this year as well. He finished 5th.
Yeah,
Dinger was 6th.
Yeah, I maybe should have done a little more head scratching on that situation, but conversation for next week. So,
but I will say, some of the guys we've talked about and not put on blast, but
the guys that we had saying that they got to come through.
Bingo, Bowman, Cindric,
LaJoy.
Elliott was there at the end too.
The guys that we said had to come through were coming through.
Eric Jones, Jonesy.
Given, again, race 1 of 26 in the regular season. Long ways to go. But this is a very big confidence booster of we made it out of Daytona with a damn good finish.
Yep. You're points ahead. You're literally points ahead already.
Yep.
And
we're going into Atlanta, which we'll talk about here shortly, but we're going into Atlanta, another super speedway race with confidence and a car.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not building from the ground up again.
Yep.
I would have liked to see Jimmy get up there and mix it up a little bit. He got
that one wreck earlier for him.
Yeah.
And I think another thing too, talking about the big one, some of those in-car, and we were just talking to it and looking at it on the Xfinity race, but some of these wrecks, holy
hard
shit.
They wrecked hard this weekend.
Laney's borderline getting abused.
Yeah. It's sad that big one was his easiest wreck that he's had recently. And we all thought that he hurt his wrist in the process.
The way that wheel snapped, you heard Kevin Harvick say, he's like, if you hold on to that wheel when that racket pin steering jerks, it'll break your thumbs.
Or break your wrist.
And you saw Blaney right away grab his wrist, and you're like, oh no.
Yep, yep. So, but no, he seemed all right. So, no, hell of a race to start the year off. Again, I felt like it was a great race even for a Monday. Race season's upon us, boys.
Yeah, just the anticipation kept building. Like, all right, yeah, late Sunday we'll get it in. No, it's Monday.
So as I was listening to the radio broadcast at work, the goosebumps were definitely coming on.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm telling you, Cam, you put it on your top 10 bucket list races. And you mentioned something like, yeah, it's probably another super speedway race. The energy will make you put that list very high on your list. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, if they put on racing like they did tonight, I mean, you can't, as a race fan, ask for much more.
No,
They're
To
still
sit in
doing
the
photos.
to sit in the stands and see the way those boys were racing 3 wide for laps on laps, and yeah, that's a race fan's dream right there.
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, obviously. So William Byron, he's finally gets to check that Daytona mark, and we just kind of mentioned it. I mean, he puts his mark not only on the Daytona 500 win list, but he's officially in the playoffs to start
yep.
the next season.
Championship hunt starts now.
I
So,
mean, you want to talk about changing the trajectory of a year too. He's on
oh
a
yeah,
whole different schedule than everybody else the rest of the year.
Yep. And that can be very dangerous.
We're locked in. We're getting stage points. When everybody's pitting, we're staying out and getting stage points. We're going to run it long. We're going to short pit. I mean, he's on
We're
a
gonna
whole different schedule the rest of the
we're gonna
year.
steal wins from other guys.
yep.
Damn right.
Gives you a chance to kind of protect your teammates as well,
Yep.
especially if somebody's in the speedway races, especially. So, um, yeah, well, we go ahead and jump into. Want to touch on a couple race previews and then make some race picks for the coming weekend.
I think before we just get into the race preview, one last thought on Daytona. Not only was it a fantastic race, but we've been talking about tone setters and confidence for teams moving forward. But the Gas Man's fantasy team,
Huh.
if I can win with that lineup, talk about a tone setter and the confidence moving forward. Yep, this team we're
Pat on the back. I'll give you one. Good job.
for
Again,
the listeners, now anybody listen, talk about who'd you guys throw in your lineup.
hold on, I gotta pull mine up here. So for the record, the point standings for after today's race, Gas Band was 141 after having Dylan bow out early. Myself was at 129. Naming off a couple of our other members that join in. Dietzel was at 106. Our Jackman was at 92, and Kurt Busch Stan was at 85.
Here you go. I had Blaney Hamlin, Brad K, Busher, Kyle Busch, and then I had McDowell, but I subbed him out.
I had LaJoy, Keselowski, Elliott, Wallace, and Reddick, with McDowell moved into the garage. And I believe I only got one of my pick'ems. Correct. I got one of my pick'ems in Zane Smith.
0. I went over.
So here was my lineup. I went Cindric, Austin Dillon, Ricky Stenhouse, Bubba Wallace, Eric Jones, and Harrison Burton. Obviously, Burton was out early. And I went 3 for 4 on the pick'ems and missed out on the Logano Gibbs pick. I picked Stenhouse to finish ahead of McDowell, Chastain over Reddick, and Smith over Barry.
Yeah, I went over 4.
Which you want to talk about, those are 10 a pop. So that was a quick 30-point swing there for me.
Yep.
Yeah. Over.
But anyways, yeah, fired up for that. That keeps you locked into the race day when it's like you're almost game planning like any other sport. Hey, what's the game plan going into today? Sit down, look at previous winners, look at practicing qualifying results, and
Dual race.
dual races. Don't get that every week, but no, it's a fun way to stay engaged and a little strategy involved. I said we're playing the long game this year, so feel real good about the team strategy and where we're at and where we're headed. So should be a good year.
We'll see. We shall see.
Mm-hmm.
So are we good to go to race previews?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm ready.
just thought we
Yeah, so kind of jumping into it, we'll just touch on 'em real briefly here, just because we'll put out a couple shorter videos later in the week for these. Cam, what do you got for your first one?
put me on the spot.
Yep.
But when you guys put me on the spot, I should know there's probably about 90% chance I know where we're going. But as always, Gas Man, we're back on the dirt this week. And looking forward to getting Lucas Oil going again. And we're gonna be previewing the Lucas Oil at Golden Isle Speedway. So still in that southeast corner kind of swing, and getting them going again. Stay tuned for the preview. I'll do a little bit more research on what kind of track we're going to be looking at, some point standings and some storylines. Obviously, they've been off for about a week, a little over a week, after their racing at Eastbay. So those boys will be back in it, back to it this weekend at Golden Isles, and yeah, we'll be looking forward to get some dirt supers back going again. And as always, they'll put on a heck of a show. So stay tuned later in the week, hopefully Wednesday or Thursday. Probably Thursday morning for me. Be looking to drop that race preview and yeah, give you some quick hitters on the Lucas Oil at Golden Isles.
And I'll be riding with you. I'll be heading down there with you for high limit at Golden Isles. So kind of a cool deal there that obviously both of those broadcast on Flow. But now we've got high limit sprint cars running with Lucas Oil at Golden Isles. So talk about, again, we say it all the time, if you don't have Flow, again, another absolute awesome opportunity to catch both these big national tours together. High limit will only be racing February 22nd and 24th. So from there they're off until April. So last chance to catch them before they really are off for a little bit to kind of hit the ground running later in April with their season. So yeah, same track, different series. But that'd be a super cool deal to finally have those two big series paired up together down at Golden Isles.
Really, the only other racing that's left that's on the week is NASCAR at Atlanta. So we go for one super speedway race in Daytona to another somewhat super speedway race that is Atlanta, really packed racing. So we go back to back on that. Obviously, we'll see who makes it out of here with their car. They can get things turned around. I'm sure maybe some guys are also planning on wrecking their car at Daytona, so they'll bring a different car to Atlanta. But no, that Atlanta's coming up. All three series are still racing again down there. Again, series is kicking into full swing. Just clicking them off again with Atlanta. And with that, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about race picks. I know it's only Monday. We just finished up with the 500, but should we make some race picks here for Atlanta?
I think we gotta. I mean, I might as well go first.
Well, so we are, just to explain how we do our picking from here on out, we are going in reverse order of points finish from the previous race. So since Cam has showboatedly told us plenty of times that he was first this week, he's going to pick last, which also means Kellen was last in the points amongst the three of us, so he gets to go first.
Are we picking one or two?
Just one.
Just one.
Just one. It was a big race. Daytona was a big one, so we had to pick two.
Too much liability in Daytona to pick one.
I kind of like that too. Can hedge your bet a little bit, but all right, go ahead.
Kyle Busch.
Jeez. Did you think about that at all?
Not really. He was fast today. I'll take him in Atlanta.
Well, I'm
He'll
gonna
show up.
rattle one off right away too. This guy's gonna go back to back at Atlanta. Joey Logano.
Oh, JL22.
And Cam's got to figure out what he's doing because he wasn't prepared.
And
Ooh.
I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay with HMS, getting a hometown win. Gonna sound that bell. Chase Elliott, he's gonna get a win. Obviously, a down year with the injury last year, not getting a win. This is kind of his hometown track. He got it done here a few years ago. And I'm going to stay in the Hendrick camp, and I think Chase Elliott's going to get it done.
So real quick, I'll just read out the top 5 from last year's race. This is the spring race as well. Logano, Keselowski, Christopher Bell, Corey LaJoy, and Tyler Reddick were your top 5.
Yeah, I thought about Reddick, but he usually likes to run right up along the fence, which is scary.
So
I set it on my expectations. If he can keep it out of the fence, he'd win a few more. But it races like a super speedway and doesn't take much to catch that right rear in the fence.
oh, fair enough.
So those are kind of race previews, race picks going into the weekend. So obviously stay tuned for those short videos to come out. They give you more little in-depth track picks, guys to look out for, a little more in-depth detail as we go throughout the week. As we kind of wrap up again, the episode 22, as always, if you want to get in on the fantasy thing yet, we got time. You got time. Yep. It's on our socials. Jump into that.
We'll throw it out a couple more times on the socials this week to get everybody involved. And
yep.
With how terrible we all performed this week, you got time to catch up.
Yeah, there's time. The window is still open to be in there. But as we wrap up again, we always enjoy feedback, comments, race picks, anything as we go throughout the season here. So if you got ideas, shoot them to us. We're more than happy to put stuff together. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for race previews, and we'll see y'all next week.